So I want to heal shame in people. And kind of what I mean by that is we all carry these stories about who we are that we made up when we were little. Or that people put on us, expectations that we feel we have to live up to. We're trying to take care of people and we can't figure out how to do it. We have all this stuff inside of us and we're stoic instead, which means we just stand still even while we're feeling like terrible. I don't like that definition of stoicism. I don't think that is the definition of stoicism, but I think it's a mistaken sort of way of being that's inspired when people are like, be stoic. That's a strong way to be. We just don't know what to do. And we need the help of other men. So if I want to help people heal their shame, heal their story of who they are, and I want the whole world to be that way, I need other people. And there's something I think about, and these are recent thoughts of mine, there's something about creating order, by which I mean like deciding how things could be arranged and in what time sequence to do things, that strikes me as a masculine impulse. It's like something that the masculine side of people wants to do. There's chaos, there's order. Let's make order from the chaos. Let's figure out what's going on. Let's change how things are so that whatever my goal is, and in this case, my goal that I came up with was heal shame in myself. So like, how do I reorder my environment so that I can do that and so that I can help other people do that? Like if I walk into a chaotic situation and I'm trying to like sort out my childhood stuff, it's going to be way harder. So I want order. And that's part of what we did at this meeting. We decided, at this interview, we decided what's going to happen first, and second, how long it's going to be. And so within that space, it's easier to like stay focused and come back to what we're doing.
So is it common to go back to your childhood in men's work?
Yeah.
How often do you talk about your childhood with other men?
More and more, especially as I release the anger, shame, grief that I've been holding for most of my life. I talk about it more because it's easier for me to talk about. I've actually been healing the shame. The shame is saying, so my father, to go back to my childhood, my father died when I was 6.5 years old. I didn't know about what his illness was. I didn't really understand how sick he was or that he was going to die. And then he was dead and he was gone, and didn't have a lot of support. And I think it's like, how do you support a 6-year-old through that? I don't know. I think if it happened to a 6-year-old, like I might be able to help somehow intuitively. So I used to be angry at my family.
Do you remember any conversations you had with your mom?
I know that, so my mom has told me a story. I don't directly remember it. Like I have the faint recollection of being in the hospital hallway. There's like one of those windows that you can't really see through, where I think he was in there. My dad was in there. It was the day that he died. And my mom, I think she had an idea that he was going to die that day. She had been spending time in the hospital. And my brother and I were with my grandma. And my mom called her to have her come to the hospital, and she brought us. And the hospital had a policy, you can't have kids in the room. And I really wanted to see him, and I raised a fit about it, my mom says. Like I was beside myself with anger that I wasn't allowed in there. They wouldn't let me in. And she affirmed, like, no, you can't go in. And she told me later that she also, like, she didn't fight to let me in because he was yellow and his face was bloated, and Like, she didn't want me to see him that way because she was afraid I would be scared. And I don't know, she might be right. So she made a choice that makes sense to me. So I yelled and screamed, and nothing came of it. And that, I think, lays under my relationship with anger, which is to not express it. It has been my whole life. Like, it's very rare that I express anger. Because I think the story that I took on that day was, it doesn't matter. I don't matter. And this is the kind of shame that I want to heal. Like, and so I've been carrying this thing that I made up when I was 5, 6, that's infected all my relationships. So when I don't get treated the way I hoped I would get treated, I don't say, hey, let's work this out, let's do something different, I don't like this. I say nothing. And I accept it, and I think, okay, this is yet another thing to deal with. I got it, I can do it. I'm strong enough. And I wasn't aware that I was sad. It's just, I was though. Like,
you think that's common with men? Shutting down like that?
Probably. Sorry, I'm like in my experience. That's all. It's okay. Yeah, taking that on really did me a disservice. You know, this idea like, oh, I see, things don't go the way that I hoped. Things don't go the way that I asked for. I tried once to ask, fuck it, this person is who they are. I will deal with my pain alone.
You're talking about like a girlfriend, for example? Yeah.
That happened in my relationship. And then I spent a lot of time being really angry at her about that for stuff that I never stood up for myself on, never brought up a second time. In the moment, I accepted it. And it hurts me to even say those words. You know, I'm saying the words that I said to myself then, and to say them now, it makes me feel, it hurts my heart. Like I can feel it in here. It's crazy. It's like between my voice and my heart, there's this feeling of like sadness, of hurt. As I say, like, I chose that my life isn't going to be as good as I wanted it to be. And I'm just going to deal with that.
Jeez, man, I didn't mean to. Jeez, you bring me back to all these sad moments.
This is what happens in men's work, you know, and I can be pretty clear about it because I've done a lot of it. This is what happens, okay? It's not comfortable.
Yeah, I want to hear more about that. I want to hear more about that. So, you know, you've been doing this for 4 years or so. Mm-hmm. So it is kind of a recent thing. Before the crazy year of COVID, I guess from when you were, let's say, in high school to up until a few years ago, how were you dealing with your emotions, if at all? I mean, how would you look back on your life and how you were dealing with things? And I asked that because I'm just curious, like what was the final, what changed in your life? You said your friend Sean reached out and said, hey, we should do this. So why did he even reach out to you? Because clearly y'all had probably had some talks or some heart to hearts.
Yeah.
So what was that like when you guys started to have these talks, and then when he brought up the idea, like how did that happen?
Okay, well, you asked me two things there about very different time periods, so I'll try to link the two. You asked me, what was my relationship with my feelings around high school time? And I was afraid of being bullied then. I didn't get bullied. I saw people get bullied. I saw people who were sensitive like I am and unsure of how to be like I am. I saw them get picked on, and I didn't want that for me. So I cultivated a way of disappearing, of being like not having much of an impact on people, dressing in a way that I didn't care about, where I looked good enough, kind of like fit in, didn't want to wear anything to stand out in any way. I didn't want to be popular. I didn't want to be a nerd. I didn't want to be anything. So that's probably what's behind, like, you asked me what's my identity. High school was a process in having no identity in order to protect myself. And just as a little thought bubble, I want to come back. The identity conversations that are so prevalent, especially in liberal spaces, where that's my world, left-leaning, whatever, it's really hard for me because I hear a lot of generalizing, a lot of like implied assumptions about how people are based on whether they're white or black or gay or straight. And I'm putting quotation marks around all these words because they are words. Like, people say them as if like they capture who a person is in every like action that person commits, or everything that happens to them. And that's not true. It's a generalization. Personally, I think it hurts people and it doesn't heal the problem. Anyway.
Yeah, so
identity.
So just to wrap that up, I think there's a tremendous amount of pressure on kids to like find their identity when they don't know it. And how we all kind of forgot, like, man, when we were 13, 14, 15.
I've been talking to a family friend. She, I guess I won't say who she is. A 17-year-old girl, and she's struggling right now to find out, like, what her identity is, for lack of a better word. Like, what do I care about? How do I behave? How do I deal with my insecurities? How do I share with my friends, or do I not, because I don't want them to think I'm weak? It's like, it's been amazing. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to speak with this person who's 17, and they're dealing actively, like currently, with this very hard part of life about how do I, coming out of childhood where it's more like I just get to experience the world, and then we start to get the idea that it really starts to sink into us. Like, people have ideas of how the world's supposed to be and how a person like me, whatever that means, is supposed to be. And so, like, do I be like that, or do I keep just being who I am, whatever that means? And we're not super fluent with that kind of speaking about ourselves yet because we're young. And so, like, I want to be who I am, but what is that? I don't know. And I feel all this pressure to be some kind of way, and it's not really clear to me what kind of way that is supposed to be. It's a real dilemma. And so I'm trying to help this person define themselves in a way that works for them.
Mm-hmm.
I think when adults try to help kids do that, they often end up telling them, this is how you should be. And they might not be aware that that's what they're doing.
What's an example of that? Of, like, let's say an adult telling a child, like, you should do X.
So you should be a good member of the community. You should do something each day for the good of the community. That sounds great. I think that is great, personally. It's not specific. It's like, how do I know if I did that? And if I feel like I didn't do it, how do I feel about myself then? And it's not a goal that I created personally. So now I'm trying to live up to somebody else's goal that sounds pretty good without specific guidance for even what that would look like. And that is sort of thing is where my shame stories come from. And I think it's, to get back to men's work, one of the big issues that I notice again and again is with goal setting like this. Like, I want to be better at communicating with my wife. Okay, that's great. What does that look like? Well, it looks like, when she is upset after I did something, I want to say, I'm sorry. I hear that you're upset. And then my question is, how do you know that you're better at it? At what point can you look back on your behavior and think, I am better at communicating with my wife now? So we end up creating these vague goals. I want to be better at such and such. And when the goal is vague, it's impossible to affirm that it's completed. So the feeling of success of having completed a goal can never occur. And that's a major obstacle that I see again and again. So
what would be an example of, if you could say, like, just hammering down on communicating with your wife, like, what would be a better specific goal? Just saying, I just want to be better at it.
It would depend on the situation. I would say, I'll try to make something up. I'd say, first of all, have a conversation with your wife where you understand clearly what it is that she wants. Like, not just, I want you to be better at this, husband.
Like, I want you to help around the house, let's say, like a common thing you hear. Like, I don't want to have to ask for you to clean up or do the dishes or cook. I just want you to do it. I don't want to have to ask, right? I think that's a very common thing.
Mm-hmm. And that's pretty specific, right? Like, cleaning up, doing the dishes, especially doing the dishes, very specific. So first I would want to investigate with this person, the guy in this case, like, what is it about you that aligns with actually wanting to clean the dishes? Are you doing it because you like a clean house? Are you doing it because you like when your wife feels at ease? Are you doing it for some other reason? Okay, like, what is it? Not just because she wants you to do it. Why do you actually want to do it? Because clearly you don't feel like doing it. Otherwise you'd do it. So connect it with why you actually want to. Like, what are your values? What do you believe in? And then now you're connected, like, at a heart level with washing the dishes. You can reference that because you did that. That's work. Okay, that's work. It's not easy. What do I believe in? What are my values? It's not easy because people don't do that since they're young. And then you could set a goal, like, okay, every night this week, I'm going to clean the dishes by 1 hour after we're done eating, or whenever it is that like works in the situation. Specific. Now I can see, did I do it or not? And that's super important. It seems very simple. It's really important. Because if I set a goal, again, I'm just going to say it one more time. If I set a goal that's too vague, I can't know if I accomplished it. And so I have no idea if I'm getting better.
Yeah.
Very simple, very important.
Yeah. What do you find yourself helping other men with in regards to their relationships? Is that a main issue that people that come to men's work and that you have conversations with, are the problems? I mean, I guess they're all over the place, right? Like,
they are.
Some men are single, some are not. Some are divorced. So I guess it's all over the place. So let's just go back to, or let's kind of, if it's okay, fast forward to kind of the infancies or right before you started to really commit to this kind of journey you're on now, and your friend, and what those conversations were like.
Okay. So when Sean and I started connecting on a deeper level, like on a heart level, I'll say, like it's very common for people to connect here, especially men. That's like sports stats, like who do we admire and why? Well, that gets into the heart level. How do things work? What did I do yesterday? That's like up here. Like when we start getting down here, and I started doing that with Sean because we were both having relationship struggles, and we found that each other were able to listen in a way that worked for us. So that's how we started to get connected. And then he gave me a book that helped me to embrace the idea that masculinity could be something in my life. Because I had rejected it long ago. Another part of my early story is my mom's feminism. And there were really not a lot of this happened, but they were really impactful, where the radio would be on in the car, and there's a specific story that she remembers. It happened a bunch of times as far as I can recall, but she remembers the one time because I spoke to her. Bob Dole was on the radio. She didn't like Bob Dole. And her response to whatever it was that Bob Dole said was, "Fucking men." And that happened often enough, something like that I spoke up to her and said, "Mom, I'm afraid that you're not going to like me and Dan when we grow up." And she told me later that had a huge impact on her, and she was like, "I got to change my behavior." And I think she did.
Dan's your brother?
Yeah.
And how old were you when you finally spoke up? Like, were you 7 or 8, or were you like,
I think I was
11 or 12?
Maybe 11.
Yeah, okay. So did she change?
It's hard for me to evaluate. I don't really remember. It had already sunk into me that I didn't want to be a man. And I didn't say that to myself. It just was there. It was sort of like that I don't matter. I didn't say it to myself all the time. It just was there, and it was informing all of my behavior. So I, like her, well, like what I thought she was doing, I'm always looking at men and being like, how are they screwing up? Like, not only am I not going to be like them, I'm going to protect everybody against them. And that, to just throw a piece in what I think masculinity is about, is protecting. That's a piece of it that I think resonates with all the men that I know. Like, we want to protect the people and ourselves from stuff that's dangerous. And men are dangerous, and that's okay. That's just how it is. And wanting to protect people from dangerous men is a good thing, in my opinion. It's just, I made every man dangerous. I made myself dangerous, whether or not I was. Like, in my head, conceptually. And I assume that people are afraid of me. And it destroys my confidence. It destroys my dignity. And
so you I would imagine had these conversations with Sean, what you just said. Did you share stuff like this with him? And then he was saying, what did he say? What was it?
We weren't to this point yet.
Okay.
We wouldn't have been able to. For me, it still feels risky to say what I think masculinity is, because of the amount of attack I perceive the concept of men to be under right now. Like, even starting the conversation, I feel like, is asking for trouble. And I'm willing to start it and endure whatever happens. Like I said, men's work growth is uncomfortable. Often. Not always. But like, healing from this shame stuff it's uncomfortable. And I've been learning through the work I've been doing that's often where I want to go. It's something to really pay attention to. Okay, I'm uncomfortable. Let me see exactly what that feels like. Be with it. And learn more and more how to stay like conscious and in my heart, or like whatever the situation calls for, stay grounded. Stay connected to what it is that I'm serving more deeply, instead of going into, it's not fair, or whatever.
Yeah. Are you religious at all?
No, I have a relationship with God, and I am spiritual. I do not call myself religious, because to me religious is about the structure, the people who are in between God and other people. And I think that's okay. You know, obviously that's done a lot of harm in different ways over the course of history. Like those people abuse their power, whether they mean to or not. And
do you guys focus on religion at all? Probably not. I mean, if you're not, then
no.
it's not.
No, it doesn't.
God at all, or any sort of concept, or is it
No.
it just totally secular?
It's not. It's neither. It's not relevant.
Yeah.
It can be if God influences my what I want to be about, if my ideas, wherever my ideas come from of who I want to be and what kind of world I want to create, it doesn't matter where that comes from. It just matters that you have that. And so in practice, we don't talk about God. We don't talk about politics. Like sometimes if politics is making us upset, that's relevant to what we're doing. But in terms of personal healing, it's only necessary to talk about it if it's part of my story. In terms of informing what kind of person do I want to be, it's okay if God's a part of that. It's okay if God's not a part of that. Or, you know, whatever else you have that's a part or not a part of that.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, it's really nice. It's like, it's not even an argument that needs to happen or a debate, not in the men's spaces that I've been in. You know, I know that some men who are leaders are informed by their belief in God, but they don't need to explicitly talk about that. And like religious patterns of behavior, we don't use them.
Yeah. Can I read you a quote from Mankind Project?
Sure.
The Mankind Project USA creates a world where men act on their individual and shared responsibility for the future of humanity by initiating and supporting men on a path of emotional maturity, spiritual awareness, and deepening community. So, I'm assuming you agree with that mission. That's why you're a part of it.
I do agree. I think it's a mission I'm willing to support.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when did you and Sean decide to go down and experience the Mankind Project and get involved?
So Sean and I didn't do that together. We created our own thing from scratch.
I see. So what's that?
That doesn't exist anymore. It was during COVID. We did it on Zoom. It was a space to discover and teach each other what is masculinity. That's one of the things that we put on our website. Interestingly, I think that really turned off some of our friends. I had one friend in particular who was like, that's like the students running the classroom. And I do understand that criticism, that worry. And I'm really good friends with this person. I'm really grateful to his challenges over the years and the type of friendship we have. But that was the response we got. And I know that some of the women, like this is all basically gossip through my ex at the time. It's like, I know that there were discussions that were happening that that never reached my ears about like, what are Ben and Sean doing? I don't know if it's okay or not. And it's something that I've been thinking about. Do I want to like walk into this? This is years ago. It's something that makes me sad.
Yeah, like you guys are up to no good. Like,
I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, it's a common type of reaction as I start to talk with people about men's work, men's spaces, especially if I use the word initiation, which I get because it's not a common like idea.
They're like, what are you forming a cult or something like that?
Sure. Yeah, I've gotten like that exact response. It's like comes out of people's mouths before they even think, literally before they think. And that used to be hurtful to me. I've gotten used to it. And because I get it, like men as a concept have done harm, plenty of harm. And in their efforts to create an ordered society out of chaos, they've like made it so that everybody has to do certain things even if they don't want to. And I think that's not an example of great masculine leadership. Like, order is valuable when it's valuable. Forcing people to do stuff that doesn't work for them, that I could agree to is toxic masculinity. Making it so people have to do stuff even when they're saying, hey, this like does not work for me, this is hurting me, I need my voice to be heard, and like that doesn't happen. That's bad leadership by men or women. That's my opinion. Sorry, that got me angry. So I forgot what we were talking about.
No, just I think we were just talking about how your exes were just a little bit suspicious about you and Sean.
Oh,
and then you formed this
not
thing.
My exes, just people, friends. Yeah, and they had strong opinions about it that they did not share with me or with Sean. And I found that very disappointing. And I didn't know how to go about handling that. And that was years ago. And so it's something that happened. And I get it, because people are suspicious of men, and there are good reasons to be suspicious of some men. The thing about the identity stuff is that when we say men are like this, then it kind of like leaks onto every single man that there is. And the conversation about men is contaminated by all that leakage. And so I just try to talk to people about what I'm doing. And they're like, what about women? And I'm like, I wasn't talking about women, and that's okay. I don't have to talk about women because I'm talking about men. You want to, I guess, but I don't have to. I'm talking about men. And it proves very difficult sometimes to even do that at all because of the level of suspicion that exists. So that still makes me sad, and I get it, and I'm willing to go through it and keep going. Plus, I don't want to just work with men. I want to heal the shame of all beings, not just men, not just humans, actually. I don't know if animals feel shame, but I want all beings to feel at home.
Right.
Like have a place that they consider home or feel at home in their bodies. Just like a place to feel safe, to return to rest. I want everyone to have that, not just men.
When was the first meeting? When did you decide, you know what, I'm going to explore this idea that I have, this like I'm drawn towards talking to other men and potentially, like, did you feel the need that you could maybe help men, or did you just want to like have a kind of a group therapy session with each other, and then you're just like, I need some help, so let me reach out to other men? Like, how did it kind of manifest?
He had explored a men's group, something online, and he didn't like it as much as he wanted to. So in very Sean fashion, he was like, let's make exactly what we want. It's a very beautiful thing about Sean. And he really modeled a lot of stuff that's super important in growth, which is seeing that I am not okay with how my life is, seeing that, like, asking for help, evaluating that the help I'm getting isn't what I need, and then creating something and doing it with the support of others. Like, not just creating it alone, but doing it together. So we bring different perspectives, we bring different strengths, which I think is the very beautiful way that brotherhood and accomplishing something hard can come together, is that I don't have to know how to do everything. And that, I think, is that's something I dealt with. I've talked to other men who basically, we feel alone and we want to create security and freedom and joy for the people around us. And so I'm like, okay, I have to know how to fight. I have to know how to make a bunch of money. I have to know how to, like, be emotionally aware. I have to know how to fix everything. I have to know how cars work. I have to know how utilities work. I have to know all this stuff. And then a bunch of other stuff. I have to know how to dress well. I have to know how to take care of my hygiene. I have to know everything. Okay? And that's impossible. So when I get into brotherhood with people and community, but I'll just speak about brotherhood for now, I get to have these other men around me who I can rely on, who I know are reliable. And I'm like, okay, I don't have to know how to fix everything because John knows how to fix all kinds of shit. And he's my really good friend and I can rely on him. And I know how to do stuff that he doesn't know how to do, and he can rely on me. And I think this is the underpinning of community, not just with men, but with everyone. We all bring our own strengths, so we don't all have to know how to do everything. Like that quote, "No man is an island," comes to mind. I think that's sort of what it's getting at. And it's super comforting. It's super comforting when I can recognize that I have brothers. I tend to call these people my brothers now, who are strong and reliable, and I know what their weaknesses are because they're willing to share them with me. And something that's came up a little bit ago. You know how I got angry and I lost track of what we were doing, and I got sad and I lost track of what we were doing? So in the men's group meetings, the check-in was the lover archetype. Then we moved to the warrior round. And the warrior is like focus, serving the vision, doing the actions that serve the vision. It's also getting clear with whatever strong, we call them charges, it's like strong emotions. So like I have anger about the way that my mom's version of talking about men impacted me. And some of that was carried into this conversation. It came up. So that would be something I would clear. Like, and I'm not totally sure how to do that because this conversation's going all over the place.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But this is a concept that I want to share. That, and it's more direct if it's like me and you. Like, say that I was late, and you were like, okay, he's late, and then I was later. And you weren't hearing from me, and so you're just waiting, right? You're sort of in limbo. And then I get here, and you're like, okay, he's here, whatever, but you're angry, okay? That's a charge. And so you could clear that with me, because that might distract you from being with me and listening and being with yourself and asking the questions you want to ask and keeping things on track.
How would you do that? Like, what kind of skills do you teach people when they're like, hey, I got really pissed at my buddy, but I don't want to say anything? Because, I mean, that's a very normal human.
Yeah. Well, so there's some conflict resolution skills, and I'm a newbie with that stuff. The newbie stuff I learned is incredibly useful. It goes there's 3 steps to it. It goes, what I saw and heard you do was this. And it's not like you were irresponsible. It's like you showed up at 3:15 and you said you'd be here at 3. And that doesn't work for me. I felt angry. That's step 2. I felt whatever. Step 3 is I have a need for order and clarity, or whatever the need is, and I'm not getting that. And
Can I go against you here real quick?
sure.
So this is what, so when you are married to somebody, you get in your little bouts. And this is just what works for me and my wife has introduced this
Okay.
habit, and it's hard because what I want to do is exactly what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
You did XYZ, I feel XYZ,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I feel X, you did Y. She wants to skip the first step. So if I say, hey, I feel frustrated because the dog was making noise outside of the room, like I kind of thought you would put the dog away because we're recording here, right? That might be a better way to communicate to her instead of saying, you didn't put the dog away. I thought you were going to do that like we're recording. I feel angry about that because I am accusing her of doing something, and then that puts her in the defensive. So this is just what she's learned from her therapy. And so she's trying to get me to say, I feel whatever it is I feel.
Mm-hmm.
And I can explain it, but to not, she feels attacked, right?
Well, so you started off by saying, I feel frustrated because the dog is barking. There's no attack in that.
Well,
And then
no,
you change it to, I feel frustrated because you didn't put the dog away. That's very different.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is literally using the words I feel before you talk about what happened is all I'm
Okay,
saying.
whatever
But-
works for you. I told you I'm a newbie with this.
no.
It's worked for me,
Yeah.
and I think it's interpersonal relationship dependent. So I don't mean to prescribe that everyone do it this way. The things that I think are important about that model and about how we do a clearing in our men's groups, like if go back to this example, like you're mad at me because I was late. Some important concepts are what's the data, this is jargon, but data versus feelings versus judgments. So data is, you said you'd be here at 3, you got here at 3:15. Judgment is, you're irresponsible. Feelings are, I'm angry. And sometimes, and this is, we have a facilitator that facilitates this process, because the man who's upset and the man who's being, who's receiving the upset, the man who's charged, it actually could be a charge of joy. It could be like, I'm so happy I can't pay attention to what's happening right now, and we want to clear that too. When people are in that mode, they may not be able to distinguish between data and judgment. So there's other people there who are like, hang on a second, Paul. Like we're talking data right now. Ben's a piece of shit. That's judgment. We'll get there. And the clearing is really magical because you get to say your judgments with my consent.
Mm-hmm.
And I get to be a mirror for you. I look, we hold eye contact, and you tell me, like, I judge you to be irresponsible. And then it comes back to you, and they'll ask you, like, when's another time in your life when somebody was irresponsible? Or what does this remind you of? Who does this remind you of? And you get to go backwards and be like, oh man, I was irresponsible. I'm often late, and like, I don't acknowledge it. I just show up and I don't say anything. And it's uncomfortable, perhaps, at first especially, but then you get to be like, oh man, okay. Yeah, I was angry at you, but like it's a lot of my stuff that's making me angry right now. That's the beautiful thing about the clearing. And that's different from conflict. Because a clearing is about, I need to release what I'm holding so that I can be present and listen to you and support you and everyone else who's here. Conflict would be like, look, it really doesn't work for me that you're late, and we need to figure out together what actions to take to resolve that. So clearing versus conflict resolution, different things. And
where did you learn all this stuff? It's just over the years.
Through Mankind Project, I learned both of those things.
Yeah. And how long did you do to kind of, I know I'm going everywhere. How long did you do your Zoom kind of conferences or whatever you want to call them with Sean? And then when did you kind of stop doing that and get into the Mankind Project?
We did that together for about, I think, 2 years or a year and a half. We would meet every 2 weeks. We'd have a topic like family, siblings, death, play. Play was a really fun one. A lot of people showed up for that. It was really a joyous one. You know, death has a whole different feel. My goal, the goals that Sean and I kind of coalesced around, were to create a space where men could feel safe to talk about stuff that is from here and like really like stuff that we don't usually get to talk about, feelings and what's important to us and what we yearn for and what we mourn, what we have rage about. And we didn't really get to rage because that's a tough topic, and that's actually it's one of the good reasons I've heard to have men's work. I think there are many. In modern, this world here and now, women can be afraid of men's rage. Men can be afraid of men's rage, but men can hold it better. Like, men understand that rage doesn't mean violence. It can, but it doesn't have to. Like, so sometimes physical processes will occur where we'll like hit stuff with a bat. We'll set the whole thing up, make it safe. Like, we make it so safe that men can't even get, we put gloves on and use a plastic bat so that men can't like get rubbing burns from the bat. You know, it's like, sometimes I think it's a bit much, but like, it's not the point for damage to occur. Okay. But it is the point to energetically release the anger. And I think, to generalize greatly, because this isn't going to hold true for all men and all women, men feel safer when men are there, when they're expressing and experiencing rage, and women feel safer not being there for that. I also feel safer, again, to generalize, talking about sexuality, my sexual experiences, my desires, my troubles. I feel more safe talking about that when women are not present. And
why do you think that is?
I think part of it is, and maybe all of it, is because of our society's general discomfort with talking about sexuality. And are we talking about heterosexual? Yes. No, I'm talking, just and general. This is a confusion, right? Yeah. I'm just talking about sexuality. I am a sexual being, which means I have a desire for it. I have the capacity to do it, to touch and be touched intimately, and to involve sex organs in that. Like, it feels like stupidly clinical, but it's very hard to use words that people are comfortable hearing. It depends on who you're talking to, obviously. I don't think we get a good grounding in sexuality. Like, imagine your middle school experience and like what kind of conversations and private thoughts you had, and like, most people, I think, don't get to feel safe and comfortable around others when their sexuality is the topic. That was true for me. And so
I'm trying to follow you there.
I suppose when I say I don't feel safe around women with it, yeah, it's because I'm heterosexual, and But there's some, for a long time, I didn't feel safe around men either talking about it. So I think that has more to do with our current incarnation of society and like how we talk about it than it does about like some inherent quality of men and women. Yeah. I can't really be sure. It's just my idea.
Yeah. Man, that's incredible that you were, I mean, I don't want to make too strong of a comment, but the fact that you were, it's almost like ignorance is bliss. And I feel like so many kids are just, at least my childhood experience, and maybe it's different from what kids are going through now because of the internet and how there's all this pressure, like we said, to be this or to be this.
Somebody just told me that a lot of young people, like teenagers, are having ED, like erectile dysfunction, because of porn. Like, and it makes sense to me. It's so disruptive to our relationship with our sexuality, because our sexuality is so physical and primal, and we're sitting at a screen instead, and that's not physical. It's not tender. You know, there's so much tenderness that we don't get to have. I think, again, to generalize. No, I don't want to generalize. Just people don't get to have tenderness a lot of the time, whether they're men or women, or people who identify as neither.
Yeah. But what I was going to say though is that, you know, in middle school I was very interested in the opposite sex, and I didn't have these like, I mean, there were awkward times when you like didn't know what to do or what to like. I like was like terrified to like kiss a girl. I didn't know how to kiss a girl because I never had. But it was like I still had that drive of like, that's something I want to experiment.
Yeah,
I want
sure.
to see, what does it look like? What are we doing? What happens down there? Like, it's just totally. And then the whole femininity and like just what girls were just was like attractive to me. I was like, you know. It's nothing I ever really gave much thought to. It was just kind of like, oh, I'm a boy. This is just how it is. Right? So I can imagine somebody that's, I mean, that's why you hear a lot of people talking, you know, the Pride Month and all that. You hear about gay people talking about like they didn't feel that way. So I can imagine if 95% of the boys you're seeing are actively pursuing girls and you have zero interest in it, it'll probably do something to you. Probably make you feel some sort of way, right? Of just not belonging or.
Sure. Yeah. Feeling like what I want or the way I am is not common, and I don't have many people to talk to about it. I can imagine that alone leading to loneliness and uncertainty and maybe shame. And then there's the highly negative way that, at least when I was growing up, that being gay was talked about. You know, I didn't want to be called gay before I even knew what it meant. I didn't know that it meant to be attracted to or to have sex with another man. But kids were still calling each other gay in like second grade, you know, at 7-8 years old. So I knew I didn't want to be that, even though I didn't know what it was. And that affected me quite.
You were never called gay?
I don't remember.
I was called gay.
That was one of the things that I made sure like to just stay out of, right? Like just avoid.
Gay just means like annoying and lame when you're a kid, I think. But again, those are just words, right? I think that it meant
something else too. I think so. For me, I was very sensitive. Like I was attentive to whether people seemed uncomfortable or not, how I was affecting them. And I think I started to equate that with whatever gay was supposed to mean. And so I knew there was some aspect of myself that might get labeled gay. And so I tried to kill that aspect of myself. And it's only reemerging now.
Right.
In a way where I can be like, yeah, I'm a sensitive, tender guy. And like, big deal. You want to attack me for that? Let's go. I'm tough too. And I got friends.
Yeah. What's the number one emotion that guys have problems with? I know everyone has their own problem, but what is the most prevalent problem that you see with your men's work?
Well, I'll answer the way you asked the first time.
Okay.
What's the emotion that people have the most trouble with? I will say shame. It's really different for different people. Like some people have a lot of trouble with sadness and they're aware of that. Some people with anger and they're aware of that. Some people with fear. Fear is one where we're not necessarily aware of it. Like I've been exploring in conversation with people, like you said at the beginning that you were anxious, right? You say anxious, I hear fear. And I don't want to assume that and put words in your mouth. I think there are a lot of ways that people say that they're afraid without saying they're afraid. And I think that's because, to speak generally about the expectations in our society right now, we're not supposed to be afraid. Okay, it's okay to be scared in some situations, but in most of them, it's not. It's like you're supposed to be comfortable in a social situation. So we call this social anxiety. What it is fear. I go somewhere and I feel scared. That's it. But we don't really say it directly. We have all these ways. I'm stressed out. I can't think of. I've been more eloquent about it.
No, that was great.
But
going back to shame though, you mentioned you see a lot of shame in the men's work. So
I don't hear. So we talked about 5 feelings, right? One of them was shame. Men rarely check in with shame. Sometimes if I name that I'm ashamed, I'll hear other men do it because they're like, "Oh yeah, shame. Shame's an option. I could be feeling ashamed right now." Shame has this way, especially the way it manifests in our society, of not wanting to be seen. It's like we're ashamed. We're also ashamed of being ashamed. And you could keep going. You could be ashamed of being ashamed of being ashamed. It's like it does not want to be named. And a lot of men's work and growth and healing work is naming it. It's like that's what I think a lot of people are doing in therapy. Is they're just saying this stuff out loud that they don't feel like it's appropriate to say in any other context. And that's healing in and of itself. It's like journaling. It's like why does journaling help? Because I actually get to have a relationship with myself that I don't have out loud. And just
to make it a little more concrete.
Well, I can do that.
Yeah, like what would a good example of shame be? Yeah.
Well, I'm going to make a suggestion, okay? Before, when I was saying I feel this here, right? I feel sad about this story that I used to tell about myself, and you were like, "Oh, I didn't mean to." There was shame present in you. This is my suggestion, okay? I don't want to tell you what you're feeling. That kind of thing is rampant. Like, "Oh, you're sad? I didn't want that. I don't want that to happen." It's like, because maybe you're afraid that I'm going to feel ashamed about being sad, or I'm going to feel uncomfortable or whatever. And so there are these ways that we think we're not supposed to provoke certain feelings in people, like, "Oh, or you're angry right now. You're not supposed to be angry." Or like, mansplaining is this thing, right? This idea. It's a shame attack. In my opinion, that's what I call it. Like, you're mansplaining right now. That means you're doing a certain thing that tends to hurt people. It tends to shut people down or not make space for them. And you're doing it because you're a man, okay? There's a shame identity attack there. You know, I could say, "Paul, I already know the stuff that you're talking about. I know a lot about it. And I'd like for there to be more space for me to contribute to this conversation." And I'm not saying that's what women should do or anything like that, because there is a pattern of like men believing that they should take up all the space in the room, because that's how we've been socialized in some places and sometimes. Anyway, to just name it mansplaining, I think is a shame attack. It's like, okay, now you're supposed to perform that you're ashamed. You're supposed to shut up now because I said you're mansplaining. Okay, and that, I think if you agree to that and you just shut up because it was labeled mansplaining what you were doing, then you're like, oh yeah, I'm bad. And that's shame. And even if you don't feel bad, you're supposed to pretend that you do. So you either are ashamed or you perform that you're ashamed so that the conversation can move on. And I would suspect that the people who are comfortable naming mansplaining are also feeling ashamed. I have no idea. I haven't talked to anyone about it. It's just an idea that's occurring to me right now. Because it's so disconnecting on a non-personal level. And I think that just creates shame, and we do that all the time to each other. I think it's my friend, a good friend of mine, deep thinker, he says, we live in a shame culture that doesn't realize it's a shame culture. Like, we're ashamed all the time, and we don't know it. And we're not good at naming it. Brene Brown is a researcher on shame, and she is wonderful, and she talks all about it. She actually started by talking about women's shame, which frustrated me because when I found her, I was like, she's only talking about women. Like, but she talks about all kinds of stuff. She's amazing. Look her up.
No, I know Brene Brown.
Yeah.
She's awesome.
Yeah.
My wife and I know her better. Yeah, that's very interesting, the mansplaining thing. I feel right there on board with it. I'm not sure, if I'm talking to you about something that you already know a lot about, what would your response be? Maybe you might say, oh, yeah, I know, and then maybe share some information, and that gives me a cue where I'm like, oh, well, you know a lot about this subject. But
it
you would
doesn't
never
occur to me to think someone's mansplaining. To me, it's more like, and I think it makes sense that women want a word for it because it's such a common experience in a lot of places to have a man be unaware of his impact on the room.
Okay, so that's more specific,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's not just explaining about a subject to somebody that already knows a lot about it, that happens to be a woman and you're a man.
Right.
Right.
I think
that
mansplaining is a more specific version of a person being unaware of their impact on the room and just walking out after it's done, like having no idea how everyone was impacted.
Yeah.
And anyone can do that, obviously. Men and women can both be unaware of their impact on a room. I think women are socialized to be more aware of it than men are, to generalize.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's a big part of men's work, too, is like becoming aware of our intentions and our impacts and bringing them into alignment with each other. And that can be really uncomfortable too for people to take on, that they're having an impact even if they didn't mean to, and to take responsibility in some way for that. And I'll say, for all the listeners out there, it feels fucking great to take responsibility for everything that you do. Once you get over the discomfort of it, once I get over the discomfort of it, once I did, I'm like, I invite, challenge me. Tell me what your experience is. I want to know. It doesn't mean I'm going to like do something that you want me to do instead of what I am doing. I want to know how I'm impacting you so that I can be in harmonious relationship with you.
Yeah. Were you always like that, or is that a recent discovery?
I think I've always been like that. When I was young, like really young, it used to be important to me to be nice. That was one of my identity. Teachers would be like, write some stuff about yourself. Who are you? And one was nice. And I've reflected on that quite a bit in my life. Like, what does nice mean? And I think what it meant in practice when I was younger was, I'm going to like pretend not to exist here so that the other people in the room can do whatever they want as if I wasn't here. So it's really diminishing.
You're like, yeah, when I was a kid, I felt like a ghost and I liked it. Or maybe not liked it, but it was like, that's just how you felt.
It's how I felt safe.
Okay.
And it's how I told myself I was being a good person. And it also had the practical effect of me like losing track of who I am and that I matter. It was really in alignment with this idea I don't matter. And so I think for me, the awareness of my impact has been something that's important to me since I was really young. And that didn't mean that I didn't mansplain at times or do something like just blather on about something I thought was important to me without having any idea how it was impacting the other people present, men or women. Like, I've done that. I don't do it nearly as much anymore. I notice myself, I'll be like looking over here, not at your eyes, because I'm like in idea land, and it's fun. It's fun, okay? Just so you women know, like, it's fun to explore the interior of my mind and to have someone hear me. It's really nice. So I get, I don't demonize people. Like, I don't think it's bad. Like, there's a reason that everybody's doing everything that they're doing. And that's how we heal shame. That's my approach. Like, first of all, stop labeling other people and myself as bad. Just stop doing that. 100% hard stop. It doesn't help. Let's get to the bottom of, why am I doing this? And I don't mean like, what did my mom say to me 100 years ago? I mean like, what's my experience in the moment? Am I feeling happy? Am I feeling nervous? Am I feeling afraid? And that's not easy. That's uncomfortable, especially when a person starts. And let's accept that that's what's happening. And then, how to really do the work of being the person that we want to be. That's a whole nother difficult journey. The way the Mankind Project does it, short summary is, what did I not get when I was little that I really, really needed? And from there, what kind of world do I want to see?
What's your current purpose? What are you finding yourself doing most of or succeeding most in right now?
Giving people the experience of believing in themselves. And that also involves them knowing what they care about deeply. And then it involves teaching them, inspiring them, giving them tools to enact that, so that it becomes real. Not just saying, I want to see a better world, I want to be a better father. But like, okay, cool. But being a better father, that's not a kind of goal that works. It's not a life's purpose. That, like, being an inspiring leader of my family and my community, that would be something closer to a life's purpose that someone might invent for themselves. And
is
then,
that a little more, that sounds like it's being a little more specific, going back to what you're saying, the vague goals don't really work, right?
So a mission is going to be, in a way, vague. Like, my mission of healing shame, creating a world where everyone feels at home, that, how do I look at that and say, did I achieve it? There is a sense in which these are ideals. And then there's a process of creating discrete, measurable goals and practices to move towards that. And that can take all kinds of shapes. And that comes into the magician archetype of masculinity. And I'll just talk about masculinity. I don't know that much about feminine archetypes and how women do this kind of work with each other, and they do. There's an organization called The Woman Within that I know some women in, and they speak really highly of it. It helped them quite a lot. But masculine archetype of magician is about observing the world, creating a model, teaching, learning, sharing wisdom, transmuting experience into advice, that kind of thing. And so this would be, and there's warrior involved because the warrior is the one that carries out the steps in the goal. But all of the healing, the figuring out, the releasing, the magic. I mean, I've really come to think of it as magic. Like, how come when I shake off my body, like, I don't feel nervous anymore? There's some kind of magic in that. Like, I'm sure, like, people who study the body can say this is the pathway and all that, but I'm happy to call it magic. And that's really the meat of it. Like, you got to do the lover, you got to check in and learn how to be present and aware of yourself and what your feelings are. You got to do the warrior to be like, this is what's bothering me. I'm going to let it go here in this space. This is what I'm passionate about. I'm going to put that aside for now so that we can go and we can talk about our deep inner wounds and do the work of transformation and facilitation. That's magician. And it's truly beautiful and fun, and sometimes incredibly challenging. Sometimes the facilitators take on energy and you got to like go and scream yourself because you just like, I've seen there's a man who's a gay man, and like sometimes men, they go back to their childhood experiences of being called names, like really harsh and painful names, and to exercise that, to like get it out energetically, physically, it involves sometimes yelling these words, talking to the bully. And sometimes that's like, depending on a man's experience, a facilitator's experience, it's really painful to hear all that and to like relive it because they went through it too. And so it's very courageous and powerful, and takes a lot of skill to be a facilitator, to like put my stuff over here so that I can help this person. And that's another reason that it's men's work. It's a bunch of us together, because that person may be the person who's the most skilled and the best suited to do that process. But then afterwards, they're like, and they need support.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to ask you about one more thing, and then we'll wrap up here. And it's not really involved in the Mankind Project. It's
Okay.
more broad kind of. I see. I think that most of the relationships you have are, surface level friendships, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on like modern day friendship when you have, the text messaging, all the social media. I see a lot of, especially people maybe a little bit younger than us. I just think friendship is evolving and it's changing, and I don't know. I just think you're a good friend. Like, you just hit me up a few weeks ago and you're like, "Hey, you want to hang out?" I was just like, "Hang out? Like, what do you mean? Like, what do you want to do?" And you were just like, "I don't know, drive around." And I just think that's, of course, people do that, but I just think it's more rare than ever. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on like general friendship now, and I don't know if you have talked to men that talk about struggling with deeper level friendships, and maybe even your own personal experiences, right? Like, how many friends do you have where you can share something and the same person can be supportive and also critical? Or like, how many friends do you have that can be there when you're really down and also be there when you're really happy and excited about something? Because it feels like sometimes it's one or the other.
I mean, when you were asking about friends like that, some specific people came to mind, and I would say I probably have about 10 of those who I'm regularly in contact with, and like 5 who I'm like, really, like, I could call them whenever I wanted, and if they can't answer, they'll definitely call me back, and I can share the entire range of experience with them.
That's special because I don't know if a lot of people have that.
I didn't have that until recently. I think it's possible because we are fluent in our emotions. We are aware of our shadows. We care about the impact we have, and we're willing to take responsibility for it. It doesn't become, we don't get defensive. Sometimes we do, we still have our stuff that we deal with, but we understand that the difference between judgments and data. We understand. We can hear challenge, and we'll be like, okay, right, what's going on for me? Not like jump right into like you're whatever, but like I know you, love you, trust you. You're challenging me. Thank you, even if it's uncomfortable. That is a rare friend, and I feel very fortunate to have many people around me where that's possible. Some people, I choose who I might call when I'm feeling like I want to share joy or be with, even, we're coming out of COVID still, COVID mindset. I've done a lot of this stuff on the phone and Zoom. And now I'm really fortunate to have more friends locally who I can actually be with. It's taken me a long time, like from my deliberate isolating myself and being a ghost, as you put it, to feeling comfortable connecting with people on a real level. It's taken the whole 4 years. And it only took 4 years. And I'm lucky because I have a lot of time to commit to this kind of thing. And I will own that I have a lot of courage, and I always have, to not go with the flow. I created my own flow, which was to be a ghost, and that sucked, and I lost track of who I was. But I refused to go with, and to some degree I did go and like became a shallow friend and just got through it, where there has to be alcohol to hang out. I have plenty of situations in my life, fewer now because I don't want that. But my awareness is that, especially as we get into our 20s and 30s and beyond, like if there's a social gathering with a lot of people, like alcohol is the first thing that you do when you walk in the door for a lot of people. And now it's, people have different levels of awareness of how much they're managing their fear of relating, I would call it, by using alcohol. And I don't think it's always bad to drink alcohol or anything like that. It's super common. I think it's a way that people manage and maintain their friendships, because
It almost keeps because it's hard to hang. We all get busy with our lives, we're all busy with our own things.
Sure.
And especially if you go down, like the traditional route of being a dad and a husband and all that, it's like the limited time you have. Like me and a couple of the neighborhood dads, we go to the bar.
It's
we just do it, and we have 2 beers each, and then we just come back home. And I don't, and there's something really great to it.
Mm-hmm.
But I totally hear what you're saying, and I totally see it, and you understand it more. You're like, this really is just, you just drink some liquid and you're less fearful, like you said, right? It's just that fear of being judged or not relating. And what's funny though is, I don't think any of us at this point are really we don't have fear of being judged or not connecting or whatever with each other. We're pretty good friends by now, but we still just like to have a beer or two. So
and I don't mean to say that gatherings where beer is consumed right away indicate any kind of shallowness. It's a pattern, and I think that a lot of I mean, it depends how on the friend circle. Like, my sense is that they really do like being with each other, and if they did develop and connect, like, their values and their feelings, like, they would be there for each other. It's just, like, not something that people are used to. It's something that makes people uncomfortable. And I get the sense that people who spend time together, whether their friendships are shallow or not, they actually do love each other on a heart level. They just don't really, like, express that in a practical way. They sit next to each other with a beer and talk about whatever because they love each other. It's just, there's so much more expression of love that is possible for a human being than that. And that is the kind of thing that can come alive through the work I've been talking about and other methods too.
Yeah. Well, I think it might be time for us to wrap up here, but oh my gosh, we're way over.
Yeah.
We weren't. What would that say? We weren't.
We're out of integrity.
We're out of integrity. Well, Ben. Well, okay. One last question, and then that's it. Really. So this has kind of been a 4-year journey. Where do you see yourself in 4 years?
Whoa. Man, I would have given some weaselly answer until very recently in my life. I just wouldn't have been able to answer that question.
Well, here's an easier question.
No, I want to answer.
Okay.
I'm just telling you about the change that's occurred in my life. In 4 years, see, I relish this kind of question, like, challenge me.
Okay. I like it.
Yeah. I see myself having built a new career, a new way of taking care of my own security and health by helping people in the way that I've been talking about. The men's work is mostly free, and I want it to be. That is just part of, like, community. I see myself as teaching leadership or teaching growth, how to get through the discomfort, teaching principles. I'm very passionate about there being better leadership in our society. And I'm an okay leader, and I've kind of figured out how I think, like, my principles for that and what to look for and how to do it. It's new. So in 4 years, by the time 4 years comes around, I think I'll be able to sit here and be like, this is how I did it. This is how I think it works well. This is how I teach people to be great leaders of themselves and in whatever context they're in, men and women both. And I'll be making a living by doing that.
Well, I think that's a great goal. I think it's realistic too. I think you'll be there. Let me know if you want help with any of it.
Okay.
So that's a challenge. Have you how would you get there? What's the first step?
This. And it's not the first time I've told someone about that. And I mean, like, answering your question and saying, this is what I will be. And you being like, yeah, that makes sense. I hear that, and I'm willing to help. Like, that's the first step.
Yeah. Really, anything, because you're there. You have wisdom. You have a mindset, you have strategy, and you're very in touch with connecting with people. And it's a skill, and you've honed it. And I wish you nothing but the best of luck.
Thanks a lot.
So
I noticed my hands sweating. That means that
my hands are sweating too. I think it's hot in here because I'm like, what am I feeling?
Well, for me, I know that when my hands start sweating, it's because I'm saying something that I don't know. It's not true yet.
Ah.
Or it's creating something that I'm afraid of, like, can I do this? Can I handle this?
Mm-hmm.
This is unfamiliar. So it's a good sign.
Well, I guess that's a sign. All right, Ben.
Nice, dude.